All right, on today's upload, we're gonna be talking about DSG services, how to code it with your VCDS, how to know that you're filled properly, what's the right type of fluid that you should be using in your Volkswagen DSG transmission or Audi S-Tronics. Now this service is pretty much the same across the board until you start getting into the all-wheel drive and 4Motion stuff, and then it starts becoming a tiny bit different. So if you got a Volkswagen that's front-wheel drive with the DSG, this will be the video for you. So let's dive straight into it, shall we? Wing the camera all the way around, do one of these, make a built-in transition. In my intro, I already busted the bubble, what we're doing, why we're doing it. Well, I didn't say why, but this is one of the reasons why you might do this service this way. You might have a leaking transmission pan, you know, and it's pretty common to have this thing leak. It's not super uncommon, but it's usually what leads to a DSG service. We're just gonna set this one down for right now. But most of the time when you do a DSG service, all you need to do is drain your fluids out, measure it, and you can fill it back up within fairly decent accuracy. However, if you do a transmission pan, you need more fluid than your standard DSG service, so don't get it twisted there and think that you can put 4.5 quarts in it and be good. You're gonna blow something up. Second, you're gonna need a method to register the temperature of your transmission, whether that's a VCDS, an OBD11, or another form, or like a manufacturer scan tool if you have one, or something like a Verus Pro if you got one of those, anything along those lines, right? You're also gonna need 7 quarts of fluid, so don't just go buy the FCP Euro kit and think that you're good. You're gonna need at least 7 quarts because you need 6.5 for a dry fill, and that's what we're gonna do today. And we're gonna go over the process, procedures, or whatever I screw up in the process of doing a transmission pan. Now the cool thing about this is it's only like 5 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's it. That's all that actually holds the pan on the transmission. So in order to get to it, we gotta take this off, this off, this off, that has to come off, and it's down there. I mean, like, it's quite literally one of those things that you can see it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the transmission pan is right there. Like, I can touch it, I can feel it. One might even attempt to try to take the top 3 bolts out. Like, you can probably reach that one, but you're not gonna reach that one up there, and you're not gonna reach that one up there. Nor are you gonna reach the harness plug that goes through the transmission pan and has to be replaced and disconnected. That's that seal, that's this hole right here. That's where the actual electrical connectors go through the transmission. Let's dive into this a little bit more. Raise the car, lower the car down again, and or should we just go ahead and drain it you know what? Let's go ahead and get it drained while we're here. This is sweet and simple. So your transmission pan right there. It's very simple to see. You can see it all day long. So if you have a front wheel drive DSG, your drain plug is actually located in the back by the dog bone mount, or the wishbone, whatever that you want to call that. Right there. This gasket on here is not a crush gasket. So hypothetically, if whatever kit you ordered doesn't come with one, or you didn't order a kit and you just ordered, say, 5 quarts of liquid moly because you're doing a drain and fill, then it's not that big a deal. But if you did, definitely a 2-hander. All right. But if you didn't, it's not the end of the world and you're okay. So let's get this thing drained out here. So this thing's gonna make a bit of a mess no matter how we do it, because the way the drain plug fills is there's a tube that runs up. So this is the diagram I found. Basically, this is the drain tube right here, and then there's a tube that runs all the way up. So what our goal here is to fill this void with fluid and wait till a little bit drips out here, right? You can find this at myturbodiesel.com. There's a whole write-up article on it. Now is probably also a good time where I can mention that everything you see here, including my oil drain that I just purchased, are 100% from FCP Euro. They are not a product sponsor nor a sponsor of this ad. They just had everything that I needed within a few clicks. So if you guys need to do your DSG service, I strongly suggest FCP Euro. Get everything you need, fast, quick, and reliable. And frankly, the 2-day shipping method worked really well as long as it wasn't around a holiday. If you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to also click the subscribe button, guys. All we do every day is services like this. I do DIYs, we work on we do race car stuff, and we just have fun. So if that's something that you kind of like to do or might find entertaining, this might be the perfect spot for you. So enough fluid is not gonna drain out of the transmission through this plug alone for us to not make a mess. So let's just stick it back in there for right now. And let's go back up to the top and get some stuff taken apart. I'm gonna take our MAF sensor off, disconnect our harness. We can slide that guy out of the way. We're gonna need to take our air box off. Pull that off. Just set some air box tube off here. Just pop it off right up here. Squeeze and air box out in one big piece without breaking anything. All right, we do got a line over on this side. Oh, no. I forgot I gotta take this off. Take that piece off. Up and out of there. Don't forget, don't break your line that's attached to the end. It just snakes out the side. All right. Now, as you're getting in here, you're gonna start seeing, once you get the air box off, you're gonna be able to see your transmission pan. That's cool. The problem is you still need to, you can't see your oil filter for your transmission. That is underneath of the battery. So let's get the battery out. The battery for the most part is pretty straightforward. You got two plastic little bits that run around the outside of it. I always just take the front one off, it's simpler. Disconnect your battery, 10 millimeter. Also, don't forget about the 13 millimeter that's down here that actually holds the battery in place. There you go. All right, well, now that that's out, we got really good access to that filter. So this is your filter that, if you ordered the FCP kit, this is like a typical oil filter on most cars nowadays. It just sits down inside of there and bada bing, bada boom. Torque on that housing, I think, is something like, it's not a lot. It's very snug and good and tight. It's plastic, so don't crack it, all right? More than likely, if you do crack it, you can, once again, jump over to FCP Euro and you can snag yourself up one. I haven't cracked one yet, so I can't guarantee that you can get them. Quite sure somebody out there probably makes a billet one if need be even. There we go. And there's our DSG filter. It's not super complicated. It's just paper. This one actually looks really, really good, less than my dirty fingers. I pulled these out before where they've had a bunch of metal flakes. If you see anything floating on it that doesn't look, we'll just say natural, highly, highly recommend consulting a professional. I would also consider not replacing your fluid at that point. And once again, consulting a professional about the condition of your transmission. So installing a new filter is pretty straightforward. The first, inside of your kit from FCP, you're gonna have a filter and an O-ring. Well, we already know what we need to do with the filter, so let's just do that. The second thing you need to do is on your filter, it's just like on your filter lid, cap, cover, there's an O-ring here. This is just like replacing an oil filter if you've ever done an oil change. Just gotta change your new one. Your hands are already lubricated, so just slide that guy on there like that. Give it a little lube with your hand, whatever you got on there, and just reinstall it. All right, so we've got the filter out. That's easy peasy, done, changed. 24 millimeter socket, that does the deal there. Good, cool. We need a 30 millimeter Torx to get to these couple bolts down here, but we also got to disconnect the plug that actually goes to it. So in order to do that, you just flip the switch and it should just slide right out of there. Ouch, ouch, contortionist. We're gonna set you guys down. We'll do the voiceover. We'll make this work. Come on, let's just get in here. That should be a pretty good angle. Hopefully you guys like it.
20 minutes later.
There we go. Money. Get to the top one really, really easy right there. Little T30 action. So that top bolt is a little difficult. We're trying to leave the starter in while we do this here. And I kind of, all right, So the bolt that we're going after is right there where my index finger is. It's really simple to see. We also have two 10mm bolts down here on this bracket on the pan itself. So we also have two 10mm bolts that are on the pan itself. They're on the front right here. We should be able to get to them fairly easy with maybe a couple sockets. I'm gonna probably cut this bracket right here off, the zip ties off of this mount right here, just so we can get that one out of the way. I went ahead and disconnected the ground strap, this ground wire and this ground wire. They're both just sitting right there, just to get them kind of out of the way for like easeability here. We can leave that one on its terminal. So we might have to move a few other things when we get the car back up in the air, just to be able to squeeze the pan far enough forward, but we'll get into that when we get down there. For now, let's keep going after these two bolts. We got the top one out of the top here where the plug is. We got one over there, which is literally right there. If I could pinch the zoom, it would be right at the tip of that my finger there. So let's get these done, and then we'll get the car up in the air and we'll show you what we got to do on the bottom. This last one over here, fairly easy. All right, let's go ahead and cut these two zip ties down here. Awesome. Should be able to just pull those up out of the way. Now we got one 10mm here. We can get to that one really, really easily. That one could. I didn't mention though, this charge pipe, this hose clamped one, there's one clamp there, one clamp there. It's gonna be a lot easier if you take this out, because you're just gonna have room to manipulate what you need to do down here in the future. So go ahead, there should be a hose clamp here. Depending on your model that you have, you might have a C-clip here that you can just pop the clip out. Looks something like this style right here. Some of your turbo 2-liter stuff, they do have a retaining clip there, and it does make life a lot easier. Be warned though, if you take that out and you're seeing any residual deposits or anything, that's because you have like by residual I mean like oil. That O-ring that goes around that seal in there is starting to deteriorate, and you should probably go ahead and replace it while you've got it apart. So I got these cool little hooks. They're blunt tipped. They're not actually sharp, but they work really, really well. They're for radiator hoses, but they work really well for stuff like this also, where you need to break a seal loose, but you don't want to destroy your tube or whatever. You don't want to destroy whatever you're working on. So there you go. So when you get your pipe off, if you find a little bit of oil out of it, don't be super alarmed. It's not the end of the world. It's actually really, really common to have a little bit of oil in there. As cars get older, turbochargers age, vaporized oil goes into our turbochargers anyways. And what happens is that's from the PCV system recycling it back out. It's crankcase vents that's recycling. Now that said, also if you had like say an absurd amount of oil in there, I would definitely be concerned, and I would highly suggest consulting a professional, as you could have some serious issues. And if you nip them in the butt now, you don't got to worry about it in the future. Now that we got that off, we got our access to our last 10mm bolt. It's right there. And we have access to our last two T30 Torx bits. So let's get that out, and then we'll pop these off one at a time, and we'll start draining this transmission the rest of the way. So I'm gonna suggest here, as soon as this thing starts dripping, man, that glare is awful. Now that you got those last couple bolts out of there, I would really suggest at this point, let the thing drip drain as much as you can, only because if you're not prepared for it, there's literally over a gallon of fluid inside of this thing. And if you don't got a container large enough, you're just gonna spill and make a giant mess. In our case, thankfully, we do have a pan big enough, so we're just gonna pop it loose. All right, well, we were fighting the top a little bit, so here we go. We can get this thing out the bottom. If you pry right there above the right there above the harness plug, you should just be able to pop that guy right up and out of there. So, all right, let's go ahead and bring this back in here. Let's set you guys back in there. Move some of these garden hoses out of our way. Perfect. Perfect. All right, there's our pan. We are out. You got 2 O-rings around your plug. You gotta slide them off. What I find the easiest way to do this is to literally sweep your fingers around the outside of it, pinch it to where you got a little bubble of extra material, and then you should just be able to walk them backwards, right up and over your pigtail. Not your pigtail, your harness plug. And I know, you all can't see what I'm doing because I'm doing it like from the video. How did you learn to do that thing with your fingers? There you go. In the kit from FCP, you'll get 2 new O-rings. They look like this. Part numbers, yada, 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 yada. We're gonna take our old ones and we're just gonna go ahead and drop those right down inside the bag for later reference. So, perfect. These guys work really, really well. They go on well when they're lubricated. So if you just wanna take a little of your stuff that you got in your pan, fondle it, you know, do the thing, you should just be able to reach your arm back up there, slide them back on. Make sure it's setting in its groove. Perfect. Now, you just need to take and tuck everything out of the way here. You want to go ahead and make sure you wipe your surface down. Whatever you do, do not spray a bunch of brake clean in here, okay? You can spray some brake clean on your towel and wipe it off that way, but do not fill this thing up with brake clean. If you fill and spray a bunch of brake clean in here, you're going to damage these components and you're going to cause damage to your transmission's servos. So don't do that, please. All right. So the gaskets on this thing are a complete dry fit. Do not put RTV on it. All right. There's no reason for it. What holds the seal on these is these ribs right here. These ribs are like high and low spots, and that's creating the actual seal when we put this in. So you might fight the pan just a tiny bit getting it over the new seals on your harness plug. Not the end of the world. Just lower the car down, get out from underneath it, whatever the case may be, and do it by hand. We'll just take care of this last one right down here in the corner without raising the car up, make life easier. These don't have an insane amount of torque on them. They're about 18 Newton meters, but they are torqued, so make sure that your bolts are cleaned and that you're seating in them all the way. All right, goes under that one, through that one, down underneath that one. That goes up, that goes up. So down here, the only things we really need to do, make sure that bolt's tight right there, put this clamp in, and then we need to start worrying about how we're gonna fill this thing up. And filling it up is not the hardest thing in the world, but it is gonna require a couple little like tools. There are a couple different ways to fill this. We're gonna go over a few of them, but for the most part, we are gonna focus on one particular method, and that is filling it from the bottom using VCDS. So there's a few different tools you can use for this. First off, the drain plug is where you're supposed to fill this from. You need to take that drain plug out. They make a couple different adapters that you can get. There's a kit online that's like $200. It's an OEM factory kit, and it'll like hook up directly to it'll screw directly onto to your containers. You hang them upside down and bada bing, bada boom. There is also this option. This is an Amazon part. You can find it on Amazon, link in the description below. But these screw right into there, just like that. And basically what this does is it gives you a spot here that you can hook up a special type of machine, and you can just pump it right in if you want, or you can use the gravity fill method. You can use like a plunger, you can use the bottle and gravity feed it. It does not matter your method. But what I will say is, do not start the vehicle until you got at least 4.5 quarts in it, 4 quarts minimum. Once you get to the 4 quart mark, then you're okay to fire up VCDS and start starting the car and figure out where your level is. Because since we took the pan off to replace the pan seal, the car now takes 6.5 quarts. We're doing what's called, some might call it a wet fill. I mean, technically the transmission has still got some fluid in it, torque converter, not torque converter, this doesn't have a torque converter, womp womp. It's still got fluid inside of it. So I guess it's more of a air quotes wet fill because the transmission isn't brand new. If it was brand new and you were doing a complete dry fill on this, you're gonna be somewhere more in the neighborhood of like 7.5 quarts of fluid. Let's go ahead and get the first 4 quarts in this, and then we'll pop VCDS open to show you guys what you need to look for and how to actually measure the car using the electronics that are on board. All right, so another quick little thing that you should do on these cans, they like to settle. There are special additives inside of the liquid moly and all DSG fluids in general, but you should shake them out of the bottom and just mixed in really well. Also, if you're curious, this is called a Mighty Max. It's a dispenser extractor. It works pretty well. It's another one of those things. I'll put a link in the description below. If you guys want one, grab one. If not, you know, use one of the other methods that are out there that you can use to fill it up with. But I like it. It works well. Hey, we should have been a basketball player.
2 hours later.
All right, so now that we got 4 quarts and a really set of greasy hands, we need to wash our hands off. We need to drop the car down, get VCDS hooked up to it, and start watching the temperatures of the transmission. Because what we need, let me just wash my hands and we'll get into who, what, when, why, and what we are looking for. It's a little bit easier than trying to stand here, wave my hands, and do these things. So now that we've got the car full, full, we've got 4.5 quarts in it. We want to go ahead and start the car up, and we also want to take this opportunity to go ahead and just run it through the gears. Now, I'm gonna want to go ahead, bring it all the way down to sport mode, leave it in the gear for just a few seconds, 2, 3, bump it up to neutral, do the same thing again, make sure to keep your foot on the brake the whole time. Go ahead, go up to neutral, leave it in that gear for a few seconds, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and again in reverse, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then finally we want to go ahead and shove the car back into park. Now that we've got the car running and idling, you want to go ahead, leave it running and idling. We're going to raise it up some. All right, so in a typical DSG service, your goal is to get to 35 degrees C, and you're going to see a little bit of a dribble coming out of here. That's how you're going to know that the transmission is completely full. You might get a little squirt here and there as you're going, but a couple things you want to note is, A, we never want the car to get over 40 degrees C. 45 degrees C, and absolutely never, ever, ever over 50 degrees C. So 50 degrees C would be like 108, 109 degrees Fahrenheit. So once you got VCDS open, you're gonna go over here to Auto Trans, and your first module in your measuring blocks, when you hit go, it's supposed to be the first one, you're gonna go to group 19, and your first value is this one right here, temperature. You wanna pay attention to the temperature. And we know for a fact that we drained way more than 4 quarts out of this thing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and put quart number 5 in it, and we're gonna then start allowing the system to dribble drain. If we need to let some out, awesome. If we don't, that's fine too. Let's see if we got any drips. Oh, we do. We've already gone over kind of the temperature thing. We need to discuss this whole draining process. So we filled it up enough that any excess will breathe over the snorkel that's inside of here. You gotta, see, now that it started dripping, every 30 seconds or so, the pump's gonna splooge a little bit out at you. Not that big a deal, but now that we got that out, go ahead, take your drain plug, screw that guy back up in there, shut the car down, get it off the rack, run it through the gears, take it for a quick little putt-putt, and good. Everything should just be just fine at this point. So let's wash our hands, tighten this thing up, and let's take this for a quick test drive and see if we did this DSG service right.